I watched my husband's face turn pale as he stared at the security camera footage on his laptop. His mother's voice from the video, high-pitched, venomous, was saying things about me that made my stomach drop. But what shocked him most wasn't what she said. It was what she did when she thought nobody was looking. The camera caught everything. And in that moment, sitting on our bedroom floor, with the screen glowing between us, I realized our entire marriage was about to change forever. 3 years earlier, everything had felt different. My name is Emily, and I was genuinely happy in a way I'd never been before. The kind of happy where you wake up and can't believe your life is actually yours. We'd bought the house in the suburbs just outside Portland, a modest 3-bedroom colonial with white shutters and a wraparound porch. The mortgage was steep, sure, but Michael and I had both worked hard for it. He was a project manager at a tech firm making solid money, and I'd built up a decent freelance graphic design business from home. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. Secure. I remember standing in the kitchen on our first day, watching sunlight pour through the big bay window, and thinking this was the life we'd earned. Michael's mother, Patricia, seemed delighted when we first moved in. She came over with a housewarming casserole, her famous green bean thing with the crispy onion topping, and walked through the rooms cooing about the potential. She was a woman in her early 60s, with perfectly styled auburn hair, and the kind of smile that never quite reached her eyes. Michael had warned me before we dated that she could be particular, but I figured every mother-in-law was a little much. I was determined to make it work. I brought her coffee in my favorite mug while she sat at the island, and I listened to her stories about Michael's childhood like they were the most fascinating things I'd ever heard. She seemed to warm to me, or at least I thought she did. The first 2 years were textbook suburban bliss. We hosted Thanksgiving, hosted Christmas. Michael and I renovated the guest bathroom together, arguing playfully about tile colors. I wanted subway tiles. He wanted something fancier. We compromised on a soft gray marble look that we both loved. My business was growing. I'd landed 2 corporate clients, which meant real stability. Michael got promoted. We talked about kids, about maybe taking a trip to Costa Rica next year. We made love in our bed with the morning light coming through those bay windows. We felt invincible. Patricia started visiting more frequently. Every Sunday afternoon, she'd text Michael asking if it was a good time. And of course, he'd say yes. She was his mother, after all. She'd bring groceries, organic vegetables she insisted were better than what we bought, expensive cheese from a specialty shop, wine that cost more than I'd normally spend. At first, I appreciated it. Then I started noticing the comments. Small things. The way she'd open my refrigerator and sigh, as if disappointed by what she found inside. The way she'd reorganize my kitchen while I was in the bathroom, moving my things to better places. The time she suggested, very sweetly, that my curtains looked a little tired, and that perhaps I could invest in something more sophisticated. Michael never seemed to notice. Or if he did, he chalked it up to his mother being his mother. "That's just how she is," he'd say with a shrug. "She doesn't mean anything by it." I wanted to believe that. I wanted to be the kind of wife who didn't get bent out of shape by a mother-in-law's pointed remarks. So I smiled and nodded and kept trying harder. I started cooking her favorite meals on Sundays. I complimented her outfits. I laughed at her stories even when I'd heard them a dozen times before. But then things started shifting in a way I couldn't quite name. Patricia began asking me questions about my family, my background, in a way that felt almost like an interrogation. Where were my parents from? Did they have money? What had my father done for work? When I mentioned that my mom had struggled with depression after my dad passed, she made a small noise, not quite a laugh, not quite a gasp, and changed the subject quickly. Later, I overheard her on the phone with someone, saying something about wondering where Michael's taste came from, and hoping it wasn't genetic. Then came the incident that, looking back, I should have recognized as a red flag the size of Montana. Michael's father, Robert, had been diagnosed with early-stage heart disease. It was manageable, the doctors said, but it required lifestyle changes and monitoring. I thought Patricia would be focused on that. Instead, she seemed almost energized by the crisis. She started calling the house more often, sometimes twice a day. She'd give Michael detailed updates about his father's condition, but she'd do it in a way that made her the central figure. How she was managing his medications, how she was researching the best specialists, how exhausted she was from the burden of it all. I remember Michael sitting at the kitchen table one evening, his head in his hands, and I asked him if he was okay. He said his mom had called and told him that his father might not make it past 65, that the doctors had been grim in their assessment. I knew that wasn't true. I'd heard him on the phone with his dad the day before, and Robert had been laughing about a golf game he was planning. But when I gently suggested that maybe Patricia had been exaggerating, Michael got defensive. "She's stressed," he said. "She's dealing with a lot." "I know," I replied carefully. "I'm not saying she isn't. I'm just saying maybe his condition isn't as dire as she made it sound." "Are you calling my mother a liar?" His tone shifted, became harder. "No, I'm saying maybe she's catastrophizing." He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "My father is sick, Emily. My mother is worried. I don't think this is the time to question her credibility." He left the room. We didn't fight much, Michael and I, so this small conflict felt enormous. I sat alone at the table with the cooling cups of tea, wondering how I'd become the bad guy for simply pointing out something I'd observed, wondering when I'd started being afraid to speak honestly in my own home, wondering when the comfortable life we'd built together had started to feel like it was built on something unstable. That night, Michael slept on the couch, and I lay awake in our beautiful bedroom, listening to the house settle around me, feeling the first real crack forming in the foundation of my marriage. The weeks that followed felt like living in a house where the walls were slowly closing in. Michael and I existed in this strange, polite distance, not quite fighting, but not really connected either. He'd leave for work before I was fully awake. He'd come home, kiss me on the cheek like I was his aunt, and then disappear into his home office or scroll through his phone on the couch. We hadn't made love since that night he slept downstairs. I told myself it was just a rough patch. Every marriage had them, right? But the silence between us had started to feel permanent. Patricia, of course, seemed to flourish in the tension. Her Sunday visits became more frequent. Now she was coming twice a week, sometimes 3 times. She'd text Michael to ask if she could stop by, and he'd always say yes. I started to dread those visits like you'd dread a dental appointment. She'd arrive with her judging eyes and her thinly veiled criticisms, and I'd spend the entire time performing the role of the grateful daughter-in-law. One Thursday afternoon, in late October, I was in my home office working on a logo design for a new client when I heard Patricia's car pull into our driveway. I checked my phone. No text from Michael. No warning. She just showed up. I heard the front door open without a knock. Heard her call out, "Hello, hello!" in that bright, artificial voice she used when she was about to do something cruel. I came downstairs to find her standing in the kitchen with Michael, and she was holding a magazine open to a page about interior design trends. She was pointing at something with her manicured finger. "Emily, darling, look at this," she said without glancing at me. "Don't you think your kitchen could use some updating? These cabinet colors are becoming so dated, so suburban." She said the word suburban, the way someone else might say infected. I felt the familiar heat rise in my chest, that mixture of anger and shame that she'd perfected the art of triggering. Michael was looking between us with that expression he'd perfected too, the neutral face that meant he wasn't going to take my side. "I like our kitchen," I said quietly. Patricia finally looked at me, and her smile was pure poison. "Of course you do, dear. But don't you think it's holding back the house's potential? With Michael's salary, you could really do better." She turned to him. "Honey, don't you ever look at homes online and think about what Emily could accomplish if she just had a little more ambition? A little more vision?" "Mom," Michael said, but there was no teeth in it, no actual objection. I left the room. I went back upstairs to my office and closed the door, but I could hear them talking, laughing about something, and I felt this cold thing settle in my stomach. This was my house, my home, and I was hiding from my own mother-in-law while my husband sat downstairs drinking coffee with her, letting her insult me without pushing back. That night, after Patricia left, I tried to bring it up. "She was really rude today," I said carefully. We were getting ready for bed, and I was already bracing for him to dismiss me. Michael was scrolling through his phone. He didn't look up. She was making conversation. She wasn't making conversation. She was criticizing my kitchen, criticizing me. "She's my mother, Emily. She's not perfect." "I'm not asking her to be perfect. I'm asking you to defend me when she's being cruel in my own home." He set the phone down and looked at me with this expression of such profound exhaustion that it shocked me. "I'm tired," he said. "I'm tired of being in the middle of this." "In the middle of what?" "I'm not starting some big conflict. I'm just asking." "You're always upset about something my mom says. Always. Do you know how that makes me feel? Like I have to choose between my mother and my wife." "That's not fair. I'm not making you choose. I'm just asking you to—" "I don't want to do this right now," he said, and he turned away from me. Within minutes, he was asleep, or pretending to be. I lay there in the dark, feeling the enormity of my isolation. I couldn't talk to Michael about his mother without him making me feel like I was the problem. I couldn't confide in my own friends because I knew how it would sound, like I was complaining about my marriage, and women who complained about their marriages were weak, needy, pathetic. I couldn't even talk to my mom about it because she'd passed away 4 years ago, and sometimes that absence hit me fresh, especially in moments like this. Over the next few weeks, things got worse. Patricia started making comments to Michael about me directly, and he started repeating them to me as if they were just innocent observations. Patricia said I seemed stressed lately. Patricia thought maybe I should get my hair done. Patricia had mentioned that I'd gained a little weight, and wasn't that something I might want to address? Each time Michael relayed these comments, he'd add something like, "She's just trying to be helpful," or, "I think she's actually worried about you." And each time, I felt something inside me fracture a little more. I started documenting it, which in retrospect was probably a sign that I was spiraling. I'd write down the date and time and exactly what Patricia had said. Not because I had any plan to do anything with the information. I just needed to prove to myself that I wasn't crazy, that the things she was saying were actually happening. Then came November, and with it, the question of Thanksgiving. Patricia called Michael and told him she wanted to host. She said her house was bigger, and it would be more elegant if we had the dinner there. Before Michael could even ask me, I heard the whole thing was settled. We'd be going to Patricia's house. We'd be guests in her home while she played the gracious hostess and passive-aggressively critiqued everything from the way I dressed to the way I chewed my food. I remember sitting at my desk, looking at that Thanksgiving invitation Patricia had made sure to email to me directly, a fancy digital thing with a gold leaf design, and feeling something snap. Not dramatically. Not like I suddenly got angry and threw something. It was quieter than that. It was the moment I realized that I couldn't fix this. I couldn't be good enough, or compliant enough, or quiet enough to make Patricia accept me. And I couldn't make Michael see what was happening, because he'd been raised by her. And in his mind, this was just how families worked. I closed the laptop and went downstairs. Michael was in the kitchen making a sandwich. "I'm not going to Patricia's for Thanksgiving," I said. He turned, knife in hand, and stared at me. "What?" "You heard me. I'm not going. You can go if you want, but I'm staying here." "Emily, don't be ridiculous. Of course you're going. My mother is expecting us." "Your mother is expecting to spend the day making me feel small, and you're expecting me to sit there and smile while it happens. I'm not doing it anymore." "So what? You're going to let me go alone? That's going to look great." "I don't care what it looks like." "Well, I do," he said, and his voice was sharp now. "I care very much. My mother is dealing with a lot right now. My father's health isn't good. The least you can do is show up and be supportive." I've been showing up. I've been supporting. And what I'm getting in return is constant criticism and a husband who won't stand up for me. My voice was shaking now. So no, I'm not going. And if that makes you angry, then maybe you should think about why you're so invested in protecting your mother's feelings over your wife's. He set the knife down carefully. For a moment, I thought he might actually hear me. I thought maybe this was the moment where he'd realize what was happening. Instead, he walked out of the kitchen without saying another word. He went upstairs, and I heard him close the office door. 20 minutes later, I heard him on the phone with Patricia. I couldn't make out the words, but I could hear the tone. He was upset, and he was explaining the situation to his mother, probably painting me as the unreasonable one. I sat at the kitchen table with my cold coffee and felt the last pieces of my hope disintegrate. My marriage was unraveling, and I was completely, utterly alone in it. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. I was standing in the kitchen, that kitchen Patricia loved to criticize, when I noticed the little camera in the corner. Michael had installed it months ago as part of the home security system we'd set up after a break-in at our neighbor's house. I'd forgotten about it, honestly. It was small and discreet, tucked up near the ceiling, where you'd only notice it if you were looking for it. But Patricia probably hadn't noticed it, and neither had I, until that moment, considered what that camera might have recorded over all these visits. I pulled out my laptop and logged into the security system. Michael had shown me how to access it once, and I'd forgotten. But the password came back to me. Our anniversary date, year and all. I typed it in with trembling hands. The video files were organized by date. I scrolled back through weeks of footage, my heart pounding. I didn't even know what I was looking for. Proof? Evidence? Something that would make Michael understand what I'd been dealing with? And then I found it. A video from the previous Sunday. Patricia's visit. I clicked play, and the timestamp showed 3:47 p.m. Michael had stepped outside to take a work call. I was upstairs in my office, and the kitchen was empty except for Patricia. For a moment, she just stood there, looking around the kitchen with this expression on her face. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. She took a photo of my granite countertop. Then she went to the refrigerator, opened it, and photographed the inside. She was actually documenting things so she could criticize them later. But then, she did something that made my blood run cold. She reached up and touched the corner of a cabinet. She looked at her finger, and I could see her examining something. Then she pulled a small container from her purse. It was too small to see clearly on the video, but her movements were deliberate. She opened it. She did something with her hand inside the cabinet, too quick for me to see exactly what. And then she closed the container and put it back in her purse. My mind raced. What the hell was she doing? Planting something? Taking something? I watched the rest of the video. She smoothed down her hair, checked her reflection on the microwave door, and then called out, "Michael, honey, are you back?" Her voice was bright, innocent, perfect. Just a mother-in-law in her son's kitchen, doing absolutely nothing suspicious. But I'd seen what she did, and I knew, with a certainty that turned my stomach, that whatever it had been intentional. It had been calculated. It had been something she didn't want anyone to know about. I sat back in my chair, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the laptop. The camera had caught everything, and now I had to figure out what to do with what I'd found. Because if I told Michael, he'd either dismiss it or, worse, he'd get angry at me for spying on his mother. But if I didn't tell him, I was sitting on information that might be important. Information that might actually explain some of the strange things that had been happening lately. The way our house sometimes felt off. The way small things went missing or were moved. The way Patricia always seemed to know details about my life that I hadn't shared with her. I closed the laptop slowly and walked to the window. Outside, the November afternoon was gray and cold, and I realized, with a clarity that felt almost peaceful in its horror, that my marriage wasn't just in trouble. It was built on a foundation of lies and manipulation that went much deeper than I'd ever imagined. And I was going to have to do something about it. I spent the next 48 hours in a state of controlled panic. I didn't tell Michael about the video. I couldn't. Not yet. What I did instead was methodical. The kind of methodical that comes from pure survival instinct. I watched more footage. Hours of it. I fast-forwarded through the mundane stuff. Patricia sitting at the kitchen table, Michael and me moving through ordinary life, until I found the moments that mattered. And there were more of them than I'd realized. There was another video from 3 weeks earlier. Patricia was alone in the house. Michael had stepped out to get the mail, and I was in the shower. She'd gone through my office desk. I watched her photographing documents, running her fingers along files, and then doing something with my desk calendar. She'd written something down on a piece of paper that she'd tucked into her purse. Another video from 2 months back showed her in our bedroom while we were downstairs. She'd opened my nightstand drawer. She'd looked through my things. She'd photographed something on her phone. The pattern was unmistakable. Patricia wasn't just visiting. She was investigating. She was building a case against me, though I couldn't yet understand what case that might be. I made copies of the videos. I uploaded them to a cloud drive with a password only I knew. I was preparing for something, though I still didn't know exactly what. Divorce? Confrontation? Protection? On Saturday morning, Michael was in the garage working on his truck. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and finally allowed myself to think clearly about what I needed to do. I called my friend Jessica. She wasn't just a friend, she was a divorce attorney. We'd met in college, stayed in touch, and though I'd never wanted to use her professionally, I suddenly needed to. "Can we talk?" I asked. "Not as friends, as attorney and client." There was a pause. "Emily, are you okay?" "I need advice, and I need attorney-client privilege." She agreed to meet me at her office on Monday morning. I hung up and sat in the silence of my kitchen, listening to the sound of Michael's drill in the garage, and felt something shift inside me. I was taking control. Finally, Monday morning came gray and cold. I told Michael I had a client meeting downtown and drove to Jessica's office in a professional building near the courthouse. My hands were shaking as I rode the elevator to the 4th floor. Jessica's office was everything you'd expect from a successful attorney. Sleek, expensive, neutral. She sat across from me with a legal pad, and she didn't interrupt once as I told her everything. The comments, the constant criticism, the Sunday visits that had become invasions, the video footage that showed Patricia methodically gathering information about my life. "Do you have the videos?" she asked. "On a cloud drive. I can show you." She took notes. Her expression remained professionally neutral, but I could see the shift in her eyes. She was seeing the pattern I'd seen. "Emily, I want to be clear about something," she said carefully. "Based on what you're describing, your marriage is in serious trouble. Not because of anything you've done, but because your husband is not protecting your interests. He's aligned with his mother against you." I nodded, even though hearing it said aloud made something crack inside my chest. "Do you want to stay in this marriage?" she asked. I opened my mouth. Then I closed it. Did I? 3 months ago, absolutely. 6 weeks ago, I would have fought for it. But sitting in this office, looking at a woman who could help me extricate myself from it, I realized I didn't know the answer anymore. "I don't know," I said finally. "But I need to understand what Patricia's doing first. I need to know if she's planning something." Jessica leaned back in her chair. "I have an investigator I work with. He's discreet, and he's good. He could follow your mother-in-law, see what she's doing with the information she's gathering. It would cost you, but it would give us answers." "Do it," I said without hesitation. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of living a double life. Michael and I maintained the surface of our marriage. We ate dinner together. We slept in the same bed. We maintained the appearance of normalcy. But something fundamental had broken. I could feel it like a hairline fracture in glass that would eventually shatter under pressure. Patricia came by for her Wednesday visit. I watched her move through the house like she owned it, and I felt nothing but cold clarity. I didn't hate her. I didn't feel angry. I felt like I was observing an opponent in a game I'd just learned to play. Emily, you look tired, she said, settling herself at the kitchen island. Is everything all right? You and Michael aren't having problems, are you? The question was so perfectly calculated. She was probing, fishing, seeing if I'd reveal anything she could use. I smiled at her with the same empty brightness she used on me. Everything's wonderful, I said. Business is good. Michael's happy. Life is perfect. I watched her eyes narrow slightly. She didn't believe me, but more importantly, she couldn't find anything to attack. I was taking that power back. On a Thursday morning, Jessica called. The investigator has something. Can you come in? I made an excuse to Michael, another client meeting, and drove to her office. The investigator, a man named Carl, with tired eyes and a wedding ring, presented me with a folder. Your mother-in-law has been in contact with a real estate agent, he said. She's been viewing properties, high-end properties, all in her name only. What? I couldn't quite process what he was saying. She's been house hunting, seriously house hunting, and she's been asking the real estate agent specific questions about the tax implications of transferring property. Jessica and I exchanged a look. She's planning to buy a house, Jessica said slowly. Ja, a house separate from her current residence. Why? I asked. But even as I said it, I was beginning to understand. The investigator also found something else, Carl said. He opened the folder and slid a document across the table. It was a photocopy of paperwork, medical records, my medical records. I stared at it, my mind trying to make sense of what I was seeing. These were records from my OB/GYN from 2 years ago, from when Michael and I had been talking about trying for children. The records included information about a minor fertility issue I had. Nothing serious, nothing that would prevent me from getting pregnant, but something I'd only told Michael about. Where did she get these? I whispered. Your physician's office, most likely, Carl said. She probably called, claimed to be a family member, and requested them. HIPAA violations happen more often than people realize, especially if someone is persistent and sounds authoritative. I felt sick. Patricia had stolen my medical records. She'd photographed documents in my office. She'd gone through my nightstand. She'd been collecting information, building a dossier, preparing for something. I think I know what she's planning, I said slowly. Michael's father has heart disease. He's going to need help eventually. Patricia's positioning herself to be his sole caregiver, and she's gathering information about me, about our marriage, about my health, about our finances, so that when the time comes, she can convince Michael that I'm not suitable, that I'm not stable, that I'm a burden. Jessica was nodding. She's building a case to isolate him from you. If his father's health deteriorates, she'll be the one managing his care, his medications, his finances. You'll be on the outside. And when she's ready, she'll use everything she's gathered to turn him against you completely. Or, to justify removing me from his life entirely, I said. The words tasted like poison. What do you want to do? Jessica asked. I sat in silence for a long moment. Then I said, I want to show Michael. I want him to see what his mother is doing. I want him to choose me, or I want to know once and for all that he won't. Jessica nodded slowly. That's the most dangerous option. If you show him this, you're forcing a confrontation. He might believe you. Or he might believe his mother's explanation, and then Patricia will know you're onto her. She'll accelerate whatever plan she has. I don't care, I said. I can't keep living like this. I can't keep pretending. If Michael chooses his mother, I need to know that now so I can protect myself. And if he chooses me, then we have something to work with. Okay, Jessica said. She made some notes. I'll draw up some preliminary documents, not divorce papers, just things you'll need if this goes south. Power of attorney arrangements, documentation of assets, things like that. You can keep them in a safe place just in case. I left her office and drove home on autopilot. Michael was at work. I had hours to think about what I was about to do. That night, after dinner, I asked Michael to come to the bedroom. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought I might pass out. I opened my laptop and logged into the cloud drive. I need to show you something, I said. He stood there, confused, as I pulled up the first video. The one from 3 weeks ago, showing Patricia going through my office desk. "What the hell is this?" he said, but there was no anger in his voice yet, just confusion. "Keep watching," I said. I played video after video. Patricia in our bedroom, Patricia photographing my nightstand, Patricia taking pictures of documents, Patricia with her phone, recording, documenting, building her case. Michael's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally, something that looked like pain. "Why were you filming my mother?" he asked quietly. I wasn't. The security camera was already installed. I just reviewed the footage because I needed to understand what was happening in my own home. "And you decided to spy on her?" "I'm not spying. Michael, she went through my medical records. Do you understand what that means? She called my doctor and obtained information that should be private. She's been collecting information about me, about us, about our marriage. And I want to know why." He sank onto the bed. For a long moment, he just sat there, not moving, not speaking. When he finally looked at me, his expression was broken. "There has to be an explanation," he said. "Then let's ask her," I said. "Let's confront her together and hear what she has to say." Michael's jaw clenched. "I can't do that." "Why not?" "Because if I do, if I accuse her of this, if I show her that you've been recording her and investigating her, it's going to destroy her. It's going to destroy our family." "Michael, she's the one destroying it. I'm just showing you the truth." He stood up abruptly. "I can't. I need to think. I need to process this." He left the bedroom and went downstairs. I heard him go into his office and close the door. I lay in bed, listening to the silence of the house, and waited. At midnight, he came back to bed. He didn't touch me. He lay on his side, facing away from me, and I could hear the sound of his breathing, rough and uneven, like he was trying not to cry. "I'm going to call my mother tomorrow," he said into the darkness. "I'm going to ask her about the medical records, and if she did what you say she did, I'm going to tell her it needs to stop." Hope flared in my chest, fragile and terrified. "Thank you," I whispered. "Don't thank me yet," he said. "We don't know what's going to happen." The next morning, Michael called Patricia and asked her to come over. She arrived at 10 o'clock, and I stayed upstairs in my office while Michael confronted her in the kitchen. I couldn't hear the words, but I could hear the tone. His voice rising, her voice staying maddeningly calm and reasonable. After about 30 minutes, Michael came upstairs and closed the office door behind him. His face was gray. "She says she was worried about your health," he said. "She says she called your doctor because she was concerned that you weren't taking care of yourself, that you were depressed, that you might not be a good influence on our family. She says she was trying to help." "Michael, that's insane. She stole my medical information. That's a crime." "I know," he said, and he sounded defeated. "I told her that. I told her it was wrong, and it had to stop. I told her she couldn't come to the house anymore unless she apologized to you directly." "What did she say?" "She said she wouldn't apologize for trying to protect me. She said you've been manipulating me, that you're not good enough for me, that she's just trying to save me from a mistake." I waited. "And then she said something else," Michael continued. His voice was very quiet. "She said that when my father dies, and she seems very certain he will die soon, I'm going to need her more than ever, and that you'll be a liability, that you'll leave me or try to take everything from me, and she's just preparing to protect my interests." The room spun slightly. "She said your father is going to die?" "His condition isn't good, Emily. The doctors have been clear about that. He could have another heart attack any time. And my mother has convinced herself that when he does, I'll come crawling back to her, and you'll be the thing holding me back." I felt a strange sort of clarity settle over me. This wasn't about me at all. This was about Patricia's fear of losing her son. This was about her using his father's illness as a way to consolidate power, to make herself essential, to drive a wedge between Michael and me so that when Robert died, Michael would have nowhere to turn but to his mother. "What are you going to do?" I asked. Michael looked at me for a long moment. Then he said something that broke my heart and saved my life all at once. "I don't know," he said. "I honestly don't know if I can choose you over my mother. I don't know if I'm capable of that, and I think you deserve someone who can." Those words hung in the air between us like a confession, like a goodbye. "So that's it?" I asked. "7 years together, and you're just going to walk away?" "I'm not walking away. I'm being honest about what I'm capable of. And what I'm realizing is that I'm not capable of standing up to my mother. I never have been. And you deserve better than someone who can't." I felt the tears come then, hot and bitter. But underneath the sadness was something else. Relief. Because he was right. I did deserve better. And as long as I was fighting to make him see that, I was never going to get it. "I think you should go stay with your parents for a while," I said quietly. "I think you should spend time with your father. And I think you should be honest with yourself about what you want from your life." He nodded slowly. "And what about us?" "I don't know," I said. "But I know I can't keep doing this. I can't keep fighting for something you're not willing to fight for." That evening, Michael packed a bag and left. He went to his parents' house to help with his father, to be the good son, to position himself to be the one his mother could lean on when Robert's health finally failed completely. I watched him drive away and felt the last thread connecting us snap. The next day, I called Jessica. We began the paperwork, not for confrontation or revenge, but for protection, for clarity, for a path forward that didn't involve me destroying myself trying to save a marriage that was already dead. 2 months later, Michael came home to pick up some of his things. He was staying at his parents' house full-time now, helping with his father's care. His mother had won. She'd gotten what she wanted. But what she hadn't counted on was that by forcing me to choose between my marriage and my sanity, she'd set me free. The divorce was finalized 6 months after that. It was amicable, if such a thing can be called amicable, when a marriage is dying. We split the assets fairly. Michael kept the house. I didn't want it anymore. Too many ghosts in those rooms. I found an apartment in the city, a small one-bedroom with big windows and light. I threw myself into my business and watched it flourish in ways it never had before. Without the constant weight of trying to please Michael, trying to prove myself to Patricia, trying to be small enough to fit into their dysfunctional family system, I became someone I liked again. A year after the divorce, Michael's father had another heart attack. This one was fatal. Robert died at 63, exactly as Patricia had predicted. Michael called me when it happened. He was devastated, broken, and I heard in his voice the realization that his mother's obsession with his father's death hadn't been about protection. It had been about control. And now that Robert was gone, Patricia had lost her leverage. Michael tried to call me several times after the funeral. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. He had made his choice, and he would have to live with it. And me? I built a life that was entirely my own. No mother-in-law, no husband who wouldn't stand up for me, no house that felt like a cage, just me, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that I'd finally chosen myself. That camera in the kitchen corner that had captured Patricia's betrayal had also captured something else. The moment I stopped being a victim and started being a survivor. Every time I thought about that video, about the moment Michael watched it, and I saw the choice he was making, I felt a strange gratitude, because Patricia's manipulation had inadvertently set me free. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us are the best teachers we could ever have. And sometimes the people who try hardest to destroy us end up being the ones who save us. Not because they mean to, but because their cruelty forces us to finally see our own worth.